Hello, welcome to another episode, I guess, of JumpCut Plays Games of the Year, also known as Kyle Fights with his virtual background, which if you're asking, I was trying to go with a Christmas spirit and I've ended up with like Harry Potter and the PS1, because of course I have, it's me, got the Christmas jumpers on, and it's the end of the year, and as Aidan said in the last one, we're talking Games of the Years in anticipation of the Game Awards coming up. You know, it's that time to reflect upon what are the best games of 2021, and I think I've got a couple in mind, but we'll start with one that actually popped into my head moments before making this video. I was originally going to talk about my first choice, which I'll get onto later in another video, not in the same video, and I completely it sounds bad when I say I completely forgot, but it's a kind of a small title that slips my mind, and that's The Forgotten City. The Forgotten City is actually a game I only heard of purely because of a negative reaction I saw to the game 12 Minutes. I think that's what it's called, a game that I hated. And I wish I remember a tweet that said, if you didn't like 12 Minutes, go play a much better game called The Forgotten City. I was like, okay, why not? So I went and checked it out, and it looked interesting. I'm probably going to get all the history wrong, but it was a Skyrim mod that has evolved into a full game. Very, very small team. I think just a couple people. I could be wrong again. I wish I'd looked at myself. I'm really unprofessional. But I checked it out. I picked it up on the Xbox just purely because it sounded cool. It looked pretty low budget from the trailers and stuff. And it was another time loop game, which I feel like in a year of games that, I mean, Aidan just talked about Returnal, another time loop game, and we had Deathloop, got this, we had 12 Minutes, there's probably a bunch of others. A lot of games revolving around loops this year, and this was just another one. So I was like, you know what, I am interested in the idea of like the Groundhog Day kind of thing. I think it actually does lend itself quite well to games, despite the problem with 12 Minutes being the fact that it didn't lend itself to that game at all, or the game didn't do anything interesting with the subject. So Forgotten City, I was like, let's take another shot. And to say I was pleasantly surprised is probably quite an understatement. It's just a really solid story. The game itself is very basic, but in some ways it was very refreshing. It really reminds me of classic point-and-click games. Now, it's not a point-and-click game by any means. It's you could call it walking simulator if you want. Walking around this city and talking to people, that is the game. There's a bit of combat in there, and the combat is pretty much the worst part of the game that didn't need to be in there. But other than that, it is walking around having dialogue, conversations with people. But to give a kind of general idea of what the premise is, you are somebody who's washed up on a riverside. Somebody there speaking to you, asking if you can go find their friend in this cave. You enter the cave, magic, blah blah blah. You end up trapped in the Forgotten City, which is an old city that has been stuck in a time loop. Well, I'm probably going to get all the narrative wrong, but I don't want to give any of it away. But the basic is the head of the city has brought you here to find out who is breaking what is called the Golden Rule. And the Golden Rule is basically you cannot do anything that is perceived even remotely bad in the city. Otherwise, the theory goes, in the city, the entire city will destroy itself. So it sounds stupid in some ways, but it's really not, because every single character in the city has their own ideas of if the Golden Rule is even true. Obviously, you know in some capacity it is true, because if something goes wrong in your loop, you get chucked right back to the start. And the first time, again, try not to give too much away, which is crap, because I'm trying to convince you to go play this game, but when the loop happens, it's one of those games that you start it and you're like, okay, this is interesting, and then you hit a point, you go, oh, okay, I see what the game's trying to do here. I hope it does it really well, and the game just does. It does it really well. It's not a particularly long game by any means. I think it took me over 5 hours, maybe a wee bit longer. And there are multiple endings and stuff like that, which are really fun to figure out how you get them. But it's kind of, I don't want to say it's as deep as any means, like the Curse of the Oberdin or Return of the Oberdin. In the terms of like making you investigate stuff, I feel this game is nowhere near as not handhold as this. The game does hold your hand in some regards, but in other ways, there were times I was looping and looping over and over again, trying to work out what to do to stop this from the event that I needed to stop from happening. Again, trying to avoid spoilers, which, while that was my criticism of 12 Minutes, because I was just looping and looping and hearing the same dialogue over and over again, Forgotten City, and its design and its story makes these loops non-repetitive. For example, the characters in the game, there's one in particular when you enter this city who greets you, and it's kind of like oh, what are you doing here? How did you get here? And you're like, I'm in a time loop, and you have this whole dialogue. But the game allows you to not only skip dialogue you've heard before, but you don't have to keep doing actions over and over again. This character who you can skip dialogue with, they're kind of, you set a chain reaction and try to complete this game. You will set certain chain reactions that cause this to happen, cause that to happen, which means you can get to your goal. And rather than having to go through the process of doing everything you did to achieve this reaction, for example, there's a character who you can save from getting severely ill and I think dying by finding out what's to cure them. But and in a chain you have to do two other things. But this guy, you can be like, hi, I'm in a time loop. You're like, okay, and he believes you, and you're like, I need you to do this, I need you to do this, I need you to do this, and he'll run and just go do this thing while you go try and work out the rest of the mystery. And that it's great streamlined gameplay, or game design I should say, narrative design, that makes the whole thing not feel repetitive, unlike other loop-like games, which to me, even Deathloop, which I don't want to say anything bad about Deathloop because everyone loves Deathloop, even that kind of struggled with avoiding that kind of thing. So the fact that this game does it is one of the strongest points. It's a really difficult game to talk about. It's a game that I think if you go look at a trailer or a bit of gameplay of the opening 15 minutes or so, if you think you're gonna like it, you probably will. If you don't think you like it, you probably won't. But I will say, if you can, I think this is on Game Pass now. Again, bad research, but go check it out on that and just try and complete it to the end, because it does have some fun endings. Some of it is quite goofy. Some of the character animation is bad. They can look quite weird when they're talking to you, but I think the overall result, you will not notice these little hiccups from the low budget and stuff like that. And I just can't wait to see what this team goes on to do. Either that, just having another kind of similar, simple gameplay with a different story, or really expand it. I don't know how successful this game was. I just hope it finds its fan base and people check it out, because I think it surprised me and it will surprise a lot of other people, and it's just kind of different from the usual fanfare, I think. Other than the crap combat, which the combat is so out of nowhere and it's not in it a lot and it's strange, but yeah, I can't say enough good things about this game. And I realise I've not really said anything about this game, but it's so cliche to be like, I just don't want to give any of it away, but I really don't want to give any of it away. It's just a really fun as well. You know what? My mum kind of enjoyed watching me play this as well. I finished it on my birthday. I brought the Xbox down and she was actually quite intrigued by it. So there you go. One to play with the family, I guess. Maybe. Happy Christmas. See you in the next one.